They say the most dangerous person in any room is the one nobody notices. On a cold October night in Chicago, a gunman learned that lesson the hard way, because the timid nurse he dismissed as harmless was actually the last person on Earth he should have underestimated. You know how some people just disappear into the background? Not because they're trying to hide, but because the world has decided they're not worth noticing? That's who Dr. Anya Carter was to everyone at Mercy Hospital in Chicago. The quiet one, the timid one, the nurse who kept her head down, spoke in soft tones, and seemed to apologize for taking up space. If you worked the night shift at Mercy, you'd probably struggle to remember her face. Brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Scrubs that hung a little loose on her small frame. Glasses that she'd push up her nose when she was nervous, which seemed like all the time. She was the kind of person who faded into the walls, into the hum of the fluorescent lights, into the endless beeping of monitors. But here's the thing about people who go unnoticed. Sometimes they're invisible for a reason. It was October, and Chicago was getting that bone-deep cold that creeps in before winter officially arrives. The kind of cold that makes the wind off Lake Michigan feel like it's cutting right through you. Anya arrived for her shift at Mercy Hospital just after 10 p.m., the same way she always did. Quietly, through the staff entrance, nodding politely to security. "Evening, Dr. Carter," the guard said, barely looking up from his phone. "Good evening, Marcus," she replied softly, her voice almost lost in the echo of the hallway. She made her way to the 4th floor, the medical surgical unit, where she'd been working for the past 3 years. It was a good floor. Stable patients, mostly. Post-operative recoveries, chronic conditions being managed, elderly folks who needed monitoring. Nothing too dramatic. Nothing that required the kind of intensity you'd find in the ER or ICU. Perfect for someone like Anya, everyone thought. Someone who seemed uncomfortable with confrontation, who preferred the quiet rhythm of the night shift when the hospital slowed down and you could actually hear yourself think. Her colleagues were finishing their handoff reports when she arrived. "Oh, Anya," said Melissa, the evening shift nurse, with that tone people use when they're trying to be nice but can't quite hide their impatience. "Room 412 is being difficult again. Mr. Patterson. He's refusing his pain meds, says they make him feel weird. Maybe you can talk to him? You're good at the gentle approach. Translation. You're passive enough that he won't yell at you." Anya nodded, offering a small smile. "Of course. I'll check on him." "You're a saint," Melissa said, already gathering her things, eager to leave. "Honestly, I don't know how you stay so calm all the time. I'd lose my mind on nights." Anya just smiled again, that same placid, forgettable smile. And Melissa left, along with the rest of the evening crew, leaving Anya and 2 other night nurses, James and Rosa, to hold down the floor until morning. The hospital settled into its nighttime rhythm. Lights dimmed. The chaos of the day faded into something quieter, almost peaceful. Anya made her rounds, checking vitals, adjusting IVs, speaking in those soft, reassuring tones that patients found comforting. But if you'd been paying attention, really paying attention, you might have noticed something odd about the way she moved. Her steps were too precise, too deliberate. When she entered a room, her eyes swept the space in a fraction of a second, cataloging exits, equipment, potential hazards. When she adjusted a patient's bed, her hands moved with an efficiency that spoke of muscle memory, of training that went far beyond nursing school. Nobody noticed, though. Nobody ever did. Room 412. Mr. Patterson was 73, recovering from a hip replacement and ornery as hell. "I don't want those damn pills," he growled when Anya entered with his evening medication. "They make me feel like I'm floating. I don't like it." Anya pulled up a chair beside his bed, sitting at eye level with him. Not standing over him, not rushing him. Just present. "I understand, Mr. Patterson," she said quietly. "It's scary when medication makes you feel out of control. But the pain you're feeling right now, that's your body trying to protect the surgical site. If we don't manage it, it'll get worse, and that'll slow down your healing. We can try a lower dose, see if that helps. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Something in her voice, calm, steady, with an undertone of absolute certainty, made him pause. He studied her face for a moment, then sighed. "Fine. But if I start floating away, I'm blaming you." "Deal," Anya said, and for just a second, there was the ghost of a real smile on her lips. She administered the medication, noted it in his chart, and moved on. Room by room. Patient by patient. The hours drifted by, marked by the distant wail of sirens outside, the occasional announcement over the intercom. the soft shuffle of her shoes on the linoleum. At 2:47 a.m., the storm arrived. Not the one outside, though the October wind was picking up, rattling the windows, sending rain against the glass in waves. No, the storm that mattered came through the fourth-floor stairwell door in the form of a man with dead eyes and a rifle. His name was Marcus Graves, though Anya wouldn't learn that until later. All she knew in that first moment was that a man in a dark rain-soaked jacket had just stepped onto her floor, and he was carrying a weapon. Rosa saw him first. She'd been at the nurse's station, updating charts, and when she looked up and saw him, she froze. Just froze completely, her mouth opening but no sound coming out. That's the thing about real violence. It's not like the movies. When it arrives, it doesn't announce itself with dramatic music. It's just suddenly there, and your brain can't quite process it fast enough. "Nobody move," Marcus Graves said. His voice was flat, emotionless. Nobody makes a sound. Nobody calls for help. He raised the rifle slightly, not quite pointing it at anyone yet, but the threat was clear. James, the other night nurse, was further down the hall. He started to back away slowly, reaching for his phone. The rifle swung toward him. "I said don't move." James froze. Anya was coming out of room 408, carrying a tray of used medical supplies. She saw Graves, saw the rifle, and her first instinct, the one everyone at Mercy would have expected, was to shrink back, to make herself smaller, to disappear. And that's exactly what she did. She stepped back into the doorway of room 408, partially hidden, her eyes wide, her breathing rapid. To anyone watching, she looked terrified, helpless. But her mind was racing with a different kind of calculation entirely. One shooter. Semi-automatic rifle, civilian model. Poor stance, he's not military. Probably not law enforcement either. Emotional, not tactical. That makes him unpredictable. Dangerous in a different way. Everyone, nurse's station. "Now," Graves ordered, his voice cracking slightly. Up close, you could see he'd been crying. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face haggard. Rosa stumbled toward the station, her hands raised. James followed, moving slowly, carefully. And Anya? Anya stayed where she was half-hidden, watching. "You too," Graves said, spotting her. "Get over here." Anya emerged from the doorway, trembling visibly, her hands clasped in front of her. She walked toward the nurse's station with small, hesitant steps, her eyes downcast. Every inch the frightened, powerless woman. When she reached the station, Graves gestured with the rifle for all three of them to sit on the floor, backs against the counter. "Phones. All of them. Slide them over here." They complied. Rosa was crying silently. James was pale, his jaw clenched. Anya sat between them, her head bowed, shoulders hunched. If you'd looked at her in that moment, you'd have thought she was on the verge of collapse. But underneath that carefully constructed facade, something else was happening. Her breathing had slowed, become controlled. Her muscles, previously tense with apparent fear, had relaxed into something different. Something ready. Because Dr. Anya Carter, the timid, forgettable night nurse, hadn't always been Dr. Anya Carter. 7 years ago, she'd been Staff Sergeant Anya Carter, 75th Ranger Regiment, Army Special Operations. 3 tours in Afghanistan. 2 in Iraq. A combat medical badge. A Bronze Star with Valor device. More close-quarters combat experience than most infantry soldiers would see in a lifetime. She'd left the military, gone to nursing school, deliberately chosen a quiet life. She'd wanted to heal, not hurt. She'd wanted to be invisible, not because she was weak, but because she'd spent years being hypervisible in the worst possible ways. In firefights, in field hospitals under mortar fire, in situations where being noticed meant being targeted. She'd thought she was done with that life. She'd been wrong. "Where's Dr. Kemper?" Graves demanded, pacing now, the rifle swinging in agitated arcs. "Richard Kemper. The surgeon." "Which room?" None of them answered immediately. Rosa was too scared. James was trying to figure out what to say. And Anya was buying time, her mind rapidly assembling the puzzle pieces. "He's here for a specific target. Dr. Kemper. Surgeon. Revenge scenario. Someone died, someone he loved, and he blames Kemper." "I asked you a question," Graves shouted, and the rifle pointed directly at Rosa's head. Rosa let out a choked sob. He's not here. He's not on duty tonight. He's not." "Liar." Graves' hands were shaking now. "I watched him come in. I've been watching for weeks. I know he's here." Anya spoke, her voice small and trembling. He might be in his office. Top floor. The surgeons have offices on 7. Please, we're just nurses, we don't. Graves turned to look at her, really look at her, and Anya made sure he saw exactly what he expected. A terrified woman, no threat at all. He dismissed her immediately. You, he said, pointing the rifle at James. You're coming with me. You're going to take me to Kemper's office. And if you try anything, if you signal anyone, I'll start shooting patients. You understand? James nodded, his face ashen. As Graves pulled James to his feet, forcing him toward the stairwell, Anya remained on the floor, her head still bowed. But her eyes were tracking every movement, calculating distances, noting the rifle's safety position, cataloging the layout of the floor in 3 dimensions. The stairwell door slammed shut. Graves and James were gone. Rosa immediately scrambled for the phone at the nurse's station, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial. Rosa, wait, Anya said softly. Are you crazy? We need to call the police, we need. We will, Anya said, and her voice had changed. Not louder, but different. Harder. More focused. But first, I need you to listen very carefully. Can you do that? Rosa stared at her, confused by the transformation in her colleague's demeanor. That man is emotionally unstable and heavily armed, Anya continued, standing now, her movements smooth and purposeful. If police storm the building, he'll panic. People will die. So we're going to do this carefully. You're going to call 911, tell them we have an active shooter, 4th floor, 1 hostage that we know of, and tell them to stage outside, but do not approach until given the all clear. Can you do that? Who are you? Rosa whispered. Anya met her eyes, and for the first time, Rosa saw something that had always been there but hidden. A kind of cold, absolute competence that was almost frightening in its intensity. I'm someone who's going to make sure everyone gets out of this alive, Anya said quietly. Now make the call. While Rosa dialed, Anya moved to the supply room, her mind already 3 steps ahead. She knew this floor better than anyone. Every room, every closet, every ventilation duct, every structural detail. She knew where the fire extinguishers were mounted, where the emergency equipment was stored, which doors locked from the inside and which didn't. She emerged from the supply room with a few items in her pockets. Nothing that looked like a weapon, not yet, but tools that could become weapons if needed. The timid nurse was gone. The mask had slipped. In her place stood someone who'd spent years learning how to fight in the dark, how to turn any environment into an advantage, how to move through chaos with lethal precision. Marcus Graves thought he was the hunter. He thought he'd cornered helpless prey. He had no idea that the most dangerous person on that floor was the one he'd dismissed without a second thought. The stairwell door burst open. James stumbled back onto the floor, looking shaken but unharmed. Graves was right behind him, frustrated, angry. He's not there, Graves snarled. His office is empty. Where is he? And then he saw Anya standing in the middle of the hallway, no longer cowering, no longer trembling. Just standing there, watching him with eyes that had seen combat, that had made impossible decisions, that had learned long ago how to calculate the cost of violence and pay it when necessary. Their eyes met across the corridor. Something in Graves' expression shifted. A flicker of uncertainty. And Anya knew, in that moment, that everything was about to change. The storm outside raged against the windows. But the storm inside Mercy Hospital was just beginning. There's a moment in every fight, every real fight, not the kind you see in movies, where both people realize what's actually happening, where the pretense drops away and you see each other clearly for the first time. Marcus Graves was having that moment right now, staring at the small woman in scrubs standing in the middle of the 4th floor hallway. Something was different about her. Something in the way she held herself, in the stillness of her posture, in the way her eyes tracked his every movement without a hint of the fear that had been there minutes before. You, he said, raising the rifle. Get back on the floor. Now. Anya didn't move. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, almost conversational. Dr. Kemper isn't here tonight, Marcus. He's at a conference in Boston. Won't be back until Thursday. I can show you the surgical schedule if you'd like. Graves froze. How do you know my name? Your jacket, Anya said simply. When you moved just now, I saw your work ID clipped to your belt. Graves Construction. And I'm guessing, based on the timeline and the fact that you're here for Dr. Kemper specifically, that someone you loved died on his operating table. Probably recently, within the last 6 months. The rifle wavered slightly. Graves' face contorted with pain and rage. My wife, he said, his voice breaking. Sarah. She went in for routine surgery. Routine. And he He made a mistake. He nicked something, she bled internally, and by the time they caught it, his hands tightened on the weapon. She was 38 years old. We were supposed to grow old together. And he killed her with his incompetence. Anya's expression softened, just slightly. I'm sorry for your loss. I truly am. But this, she gestured to the rifle, to the terrified nurses behind her. This won't bring her back. I don't want her back, Graves said, tears streaming down his face now. I want him to pay. I want him to feel what I felt, watching her die helpless, while doctors told me there was nothing they could do. He stopped mid-sentence, suddenly suspicious. Why are you talking to me like this? Why aren't you scared? Anya took a single step forward. Small. Deliberate. I am scared, she said quietly. But fear is just information, Marcus. It tells you that you're in danger. It doesn't tell you what to do about it. Another step. That rifle you're holding? The safety's on. Has been this whole time. The way you're gripping it tells me you've never actually fired it at a person before. You probably bought it legally, maybe even took a basic safety course. You're not a killer, Marcus. You're a man in pain who made a terrible decision. Graves looked down at the rifle, saw that she was right about the safety, and fumbled to switch it off. That's when Anya moved. People talk about military training like it's some kind of superpower. It's not. It's just patterns. Muscle memory drilled into you through thousands of repetitions until your body knows what to do before your conscious mind catches up. Anya's body remembered everything. She covered the 12 feet between them in less than 2 seconds. Her first priority wasn't disarming him. You never went straight for the weapon because that's where their strength was focused. Instead, she went for structure. Her shoulder drove into his center mass, disrupting his balance. Her hands found his wrists, controlling the rifle's direction, up and away from anyone who could be hurt. They crashed into the wall together, and Anya used the impact to torque his left wrist in a direction it wasn't meant to go. Graves screamed. The rifle clattered to the floor. But he was bigger than her, stronger, and pain made him desperate. His elbow caught her in the ribs, driving the air from her lungs. She lost her grip, and he threw her off, sending her stumbling backward. For a moment, they stared at each other, both breathing hard. James! Anya shouted, never taking her eyes off Graves. Get the rifle. Rosa, start evacuating mobile patients. Stairwell A. Go. Now. Graves lunged for the rifle at the same moment James did. They collided, and James, bless him, grabbed the weapon and tried to pull it away. But Graves was fueled by rage and grief, and he wrenched it free, bringing the stock around hard into James's temple. James went down, blood streaming from the gash above his eye. And then Graves brought the rifle up, pointing it directly at Anya's chest. I didn't want this, he said, his voice hollow. I just wanted Kemper. But you couldn't just stay down, could you? You couldn't just. The fire alarm went off. Not because of fire, not yet, but because Anya had noticed something while they were fighting. A medication cart, pushed against the wall. On that cart, among other supplies, was a canister of oxygen. And next to the nurse's station, one of the electrical outlets had been sparking intermittently all week. Maintenance kept saying they'd fix it. When Anya had stumbled backward, away from Graves, it hadn't been random. She deliberately positioned herself next to that cart. And when Graves focused on James and the rifle, her hand had found the oxygen tank, opened the valve slightly, and tipped it toward that faulty outlet. The spark, meeting pure oxygen, had created a small explosion. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to ignite the plastic housing of the outlet, and from there, the papers on the bulletin board next to it. In seconds, flames were climbing the wall. The hospital's fire suppression system kicked in, but it was designed for gradual response, not sudden combustion. Alarms shrieked. Emergency lights began strobing. And the sprinkler system, which had been undermaintained like everything else in the aging hospital, sputtered to life unevenly, dousing some areas while leaving others untouched. Smoke began to fill the hallway. Graves spun toward the flames, momentarily distracted, and Anya moved again. This time, she didn't hold back. Her foot swept his legs out from under him. As he fell, she caught the rifle, twisting it from his grip with a practiced motion that would have made her old instructors proud. She ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and threw the weapon down the hallway in one fluid sequence. Graves tried to get up, but she was already on him, driving her knee into his lower back, pinning him face down against the floor. Stay down, she said, her voice hard as iron. I don't want to hurt you, but I will if I have to. But the fire, The fire was spreading faster than she'd anticipated. The old building, decades of accumulated dust in the ventilation system, the oxygen-rich environment of a hospital, all of it was feeding the flames. Black smoke billowed from the nurse's station now, and Anya could hear patients beginning to panic in their rooms. Rosa appeared through the smoke, coughing. "Anya, we can't get to stairwell A. The fire's blocking it, and there are 6 patients who can't walk, post-surgical mobility issues. We can't just..." Anya's mind raced. Stairwell B was on the opposite end of the floor. They'd have to move through the fire to get there. And 6 immobile patients meant multiple trips, which meant time they didn't have. Graves was still struggling beneath her knee. She leaned down close to his ear. "Listen to me very carefully," she said. "I can leave you here to die, or you can help me save the people on this floor. Your choice. But you need to make it right now." He stopped struggling. "What? You want to honor your wife's memory? Help me. Be the man she married, not the man grief turned you into." For a long moment, nothing. Just the crackle of flames and the wail of alarms. Then, quietly, "What do you need me to do?" Anya pulled him to his feet. James was conscious but groggy, blood still streaming from his head wound. Rosa looked terrified but determined. "Rosa, you and James get started on evacuation. Mobile patients first, anyone who can walk on their own. Take them down stairwell B. Don't wait for us." "But the others?" "I'll handle it," Anya said. Then she turned to Graves. "You're going to help me with the wheelchairs and gurneys. We're going to move fast, and we're not going to leave anyone behind. You understand?" He nodded, looking almost grateful to have something to do besides destroy. The next 20 minutes were a kind of organized chaos that Anya had only experienced in combat. The smoke was getting thicker, the heat more intense. The fire had spread to the ceiling tiles, and chunks of burning material were falling like rain. Room 412. Mr. Patterson, the ornery old man who'd refused his pain meds. He was sitting up in bed, eyes wide with fear. "I can't walk," he said. "My hip." "I know," Anya said, already moving. She and Graves got him into a wheelchair, blanket tucked around him. "Marcus, get him to stairwell B. I'll be right behind you." Room 407. Mrs. Chun, recovering from a stroke. Nonverbal, but her eyes tracked Anya with desperate understanding. Room 404. A teenager named Jake, both legs in casts from a car accident. Room 402. An elderly woman whose name Anya couldn't immediately remember, but whose chart she knew by heart. CHF, COPD, DNR status, but very much alive and deserving of every chance. One by one, Anya and Graves moved them. The hospital's emergency response was coordinated. She could hear fire crews arriving, police setting up a perimeter, the PA system blaring evacuation orders for other floors. But the 4th floor was cut off, isolated by fire, and nobody could reach them. Nobody except Anya. She'd been here before, in a way. Different building, different country, different circumstances. But the calculation was the same. Who needs help most urgently? What's the most efficient route? How do you move vulnerable people through danger when there's no good option? Only less bad ones. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. Her voice stayed calm, reassuring patients even as her scrubs became soaked with sweat and water from the sprinklers, even as smoke made her eyes burn and her lungs ache. Graves worked beside her, silent now, focused. Whatever darkness had driven him here, whatever rage had consumed him, he'd channeled it into something else. Maybe it wouldn't last. Maybe when this was over, he'd still be arrested, still face consequences for what he'd done. But right now, in this moment, he was helping save lives. The last patient was Mrs. Rodriguez in room 409. She was unconscious, sedated heavily after a complicated abdominal surgery. The fire had reached her room's doorway, flames licking across the threshold. "We can't get through," Graves said, his voice tight with desperation. Anya looked at the flames, looked at the woman lying helpless in the bed beyond them, and made a decision. She grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, blasted a path through the doorway, and ran through, feeling the heat sear her exposed skin. She reached Mrs. Rodriguez, disconnected her from the monitors. The woman's vitals would have to wait, and started to lift her. That's when the ceiling partially collapsed. A section of burning tile and support structure came down directly between Anya and the door, blocking her exit. Through the flames and smoke, she could see Graves on the other side, his face stricken. "Go!" Anya shouted at him. "Get yourself out." But he didn't move. Instead, he looked around frantically, then grabbed another fire extinguisher. He blasted the flames from his side while Anya did the same from hers, creating a narrow corridor through the inferno. "I'm not leaving," he shouted back. "Not again. I'm not watching someone else die when I could have done something." Together, they cleared enough space for Anya to pass through. Mrs. Rodriguez held in a fireman's carry that made her injured ribs scream in protest. Graves guided her through the smoke to stairwell B, where James was waiting to help with the final evacuation. The last thing Anya saw as they descended the stairs was the fourth floor engulfed, the flames consuming everything she'd worked among for 3 years. But all the people, were out. Every single one. They emerged into the cold October night, into a scene of controlled emergency response. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars. Dozens of first responders who'd been waiting, helpless, for word from the fourth floor. Anya set Mrs. Rodriguez down on a gurney, and paramedics immediately swarmed her. Other medical staff were already triaging the evacuated patients, checking vitals, treating injuries. Rosa found Anya in the chaos, threw her arms around her, sobbing. "You did it," she kept saying. "You saved everyone." "How did you? Who are you?" Before Anya could answer, a police officer approached Graves, cuffs already out. Graves didn't resist. He simply looked at Anya one more time, his eyes red from smoke and tears. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting me help, for letting me be better than I was." Anya nodded, too exhausted to speak. As they led him away, another figure approached, Dr. Sarah Okafor, Mercy Hospital's chief medical officer, who'd been home when the emergency calls started flooding in. "Dr. Carter," she said, studying Anya with new eyes. "I've been hearing remarkable things. The police said you single-handedly neutralized an armed assailant and then led an evacuation through an active fire. They said you moved like you had military training." Anya met her gaze steadily. The secret, the carefully constructed persona of the timid, forgettable nurse, was gone now. There was no going back to invisibility. "I was Army," she said simply. "Ranger Regiment. Combat medic. 3 tours Afghanistan, 2 Iraq. I left, went to nursing school, wanted a quieter life. Guess it found me anyway." Dr. Okafor was quiet for a moment. Then she extended her hand. "I'm going to need you to come by my office once you're cleared by medical. We need to talk about your position here." Anya's heart sank. Of course. Too much attention. Too many questions. She'd probably be let go, liability concerns, something about not disclosing her background properly. "I'm promoting you," Dr. Okafor continued, seeing her expression. "Charge nurse, night shift supervisor. We need leaders who can handle a crisis. Clearly, you're more than qualified." 2 weeks later, the fourth floor was still under reconstruction. The patients who'd been there that night had been redistributed throughout the hospital or transferred to other facilities. The story had made the news, of course. Heroic nurse saves patients from armed gunmen and fire. Though Anya had declined all interview requests. She stood in the rebuilt nurses' station on her first night as charge nurse, looking out at the hallway that had been a war zone. Fresh paint. New equipment. No visible scars. But she remembered. She remembered every moment, every decision, every person she'd carried to safety. Rosa approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this. Big night, first shift as boss." Anya accepted the cup gratefully. "Thanks. You doing okay?" "Better," Rosa said. "Still have nightmares sometimes. But therapy helps. And knowing that everyone made it out, that helps too." She paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why did you hide it? Who you were, what you could do? You could have been running this floor years ago. Instead, you let people think you were weak." Anya supplied. "Forgettable? I was going to say unassuming. But yeah." Anya was quiet for a moment, considering. "I spent years being the person everyone counted on in the worst moments of their lives. Combat medic. You're holding people together while they're dying, making impossible decisions about who gets treatment first, operating in conditions that would make most surgeons quit medicine. It's heavy. Really heavy. And when I got out, I just wanted to be normal. Invisible. I wanted to heal people in routine ways, boring ways, safe ways. But you're not invisible anymore," Rosa pointed out. "No," Anya agreed. "I'm not." She looked around the pristine new nurses' station, at the hospital that had become her home. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe I needed to learn that you can be strong without being in a war zone. That you can lead without losing yourself." Rosa smiled. "Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. And I'm really glad you were here that night. As Rosa walked away to start her rounds, Anya took a sip of her coffee and thought about Marcus Graves. He was awaiting trial, facing serious charges. But he'd also been credited with helping in the rescue, and there was talk of leniency, of recognizing the difference between a broken man seeking help and a genuine threat. She hoped he'd find peace. Real peace, not the false peace of revenge. The night shift settled into its rhythm. New patients, familiar routines. But there was a difference now. The other nurses looked at Anya differently, not with dismissal or gentle condescension, but with respect. When she gave instructions, people listened. When she walked the halls, people noticed. She was visible now, and she was learning to be okay with that. Around 3 a.m., during the quietest part of the shift, Anya found herself standing by the window of an empty patient room, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The same view she'd seen 1,000 times before, but it felt different now. She thought about what Dr. Okafor had said during their meeting. The most valuable people in any organization aren't necessarily the loudest or the most visible. They're the ones who show up, do the work, and rise to the occasion when it matters most. Anya had spent years trying to be invisible, thinking it would protect her from the weight of responsibility, from the memories of war, from the burden of being the person everyone depended on. But that night, that terrible, transformative night, had taught her something important. You don't choose when you're needed. You don't choose when your skills, your training, your hard-won competence will be the only thing standing between people and disaster. You just show up. You do what needs doing. And you live with the cost. Her ribs still ached from where Graves had hit her. Her hands bore small burns from the fire. She'd wake up some nights with her heart pounding, remembering the smoke, the heat, the weight of responsibility. But she'd also remember Mr. Patterson's grateful tears when she'd checked on him the next day. Mrs. Rodriguez waking up, confused but alive, asking what happened. Rosa's hug. James returning to work with stitches in his forehead, but a new respect in his eyes. The people she'd saved by refusing to stay invisible. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for giving me a chance to be better. For seeing past what I'd become. MG. Marcus Graves. She didn't know how he'd gotten her number. Probably through his lawyer, somehow. She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed a simple reply. Honor her memory by healing, not hurting. That's all she'd want. She put the phone away and returned to her rounds, checking on patients, adjusting medications, speaking in calm tones that reassured people in their vulnerable moments. Dr. Anya Carter. Charge nurse. Former Army Ranger. The woman who'd been invisible until the moment invisibility was a luxury she couldn't afford. The most dangerous person in the room, precisely because nobody saw her coming. And maybe she thought that was the real lesson. Strength didn't have to be loud. Competence didn't have to announce itself. Sometimes, the greatest power came from being underestimated, right up until the moment you proved everyone wrong. She smiled to herself, a small, private smile, and continued down the hallway. Outside, the Chicago dawn was beginning to break, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Inside Mercy Hospital, the night shift went on, as it always had. But nothing was quite the same, because now everyone knew. The quiet ones, the invisible ones, the ones you dismiss without a second thought, they might just be the ones who save your life when everything falls apart. And you'll never see them coming.